A quiet bell chimes somewhere beyond the gym door as the girl steps inside. The old boxing gym is dimly lit. Faded posters of past champions line the cracked walls, and the smell of sweat and leather lingers heavy in the air. Regulars freeze mid-conversation. Their gaze settles on her, a simple girl with no fanfare, no reputation, just an unremarkable presence among hardened fighters and grunting trainees. She hesitates at the doorway, taking in the scene. The echo of gloves hitting bags, the shuffle of feet, the distant clink of weights. A hush falls, broken only by the low hum of the coach's voice. He's tall, grizzled, arms crossed over his worn t-shirt, watching her. She meets his stare with polite uncertainty. "Can I train here?" she asks softly. Her voice is calm, almost timid, but carries a weight of sincerity. A Fight Club veteran snorts and nudges his friend. "She thinks this is yoga," he says loud enough for the whole room to hear. Laughter follows, a ripple of smirks, side-eye glances, whispered bets on how long she'll last. But she doesn't back down. She walks forward and nods. "I want a chance." The coach picks up two battered gloves and tosses them to her feet. They thud softly against the concrete. Her heart races. These gloves feel like a gauntlet thrown. She kneels, slips them on, lacing each finger with steady hands. The gym falls silent. Even the clanging weights pause midair. At that moment, the room becomes a stage. Everyone leans in. The fighters, the trainees, the coach, expecting a farce, a quick exit. But she just stands there, quietly waiting. There's something unspoken in her posture. Resilience. The coach steps forward. "You sure?" His voice low, challenging. She nods. He signals to the star fighter behind him, an imposing man known for swift knockouts. She looks at him, muscular, confident, tattoos snaking up his arms. He grins. "This'll be easy," he says to no one in particular. Bell rings. He darts forward, fists raised. She stays rooted, watches. He throws a fast jab, too fast for him to notice her stance shift. She sidesteps, almost gliding. The first miss echoes around the gym. Confusion flickers across the faces in the crowd. They'd expected a show, not this calm. The girl doesn't attack. She just breathes, steady, focused. The fighters exchange looks. Trainers squint. Who is she? But before they can guess, she advances, quietly, deliberately. The star fighter throws a hook. She pivots. Her glove connects. A crisp, controlled jab against his shoulder. Heads turn. A hush rises. He winces, surprised, but presses forward. She meets him again. Another jab, this time higher, grazes his cheek. The room tenses. He shakes it off, his grin fading. He throws a combination, fast, reckless. She slips under the first punch, counters. A sharp cross that snaps his head back. Her eyes don't leave his. His guard falters. Something shifts in the air. Anticipation. He swings wildly now, anger building. She weaves, she breathes, she times it. Then, boom, a clean, powerful right hook lands solid on his chin. He goes down. The thud against canvas resonates, heavy as a thunderclap. Silence. The coach stands frozen, mouth open. The gym is still. In this moment, nothing moves. No laughter, no shouts, no applause. Just the echo of reality. She's not a regular. She's a force. Slowly, she drops her gloves, exhales. She looks at the fallen champion, then toward the coach. She wipes sweat from her brow. The silence stretches. Victory without words. The gym remains frozen. A single bead of sweat rolls off the coach's brow. For a long moment, no one moves. Not the champ on the ground, not the stunned spectators. Only the girl breathes steadily, her chest rising and falling like she just finished a jog instead of knocking out the gym's most feared fighter. Then it starts, a slow murmur. "He's out." "She dropped him? With one punch?" The murmurs ripple outward, building into a wave of disbelief. A few start clapping, confused, unsure whether it's respect or shock. The coach slowly walks over to the champ, sprawled on the mat, kneels beside him. He groans, not from pain, but from humiliation. Meanwhile, the girl turns away. She heads toward the corner of the gym, where she'd left her water bottle and jacket. Her steps are calm, her expression unreadable, as if nothing unusual happened. But the others don't let her go that easily. Wait, someone calls out. A lean young fighter, probably 17, maybe newer to the gym, jogs after her. Who are you? She pauses, half turns. Just someone who came to train. The coach joins them, arms folded tightly. That wasn't beginner's luck. She shrugs. You boxed before? Her eyes flicker. A memory, too quick to catch, flashes across her face. A while ago, the coach watches her in silence, then gestures toward the rest of the gym. You've got everyone's attention now. Across the floor, the champ is sitting up, still dazed. His pride is in pieces. A group of fighters surround him, offering water, but no one makes eye contact. He glares at her from a distance, not with rage, but something more complex. Confusion, defeat, maybe even respect. You got a name? The coach asks. She hesitates. Alina. Alina what? She smiles faintly. Just Alina. He nods slowly. You've got hands. Real ones. A whistle blows in the background. Training resumes, but the mood has shifted. The fighters are glancing her way now, some with curiosity, others with caution. A few whisper. One trainer shakes his head. She's not a random. You don't move like that unless you fought for years. The coach gestures to a bench. Sit. Let's talk. Alina sits, wipes her face with a towel. Her breathing is still calm. Where'd you train? She's silent. All right, he says. Not here to dig your past. Just want to know, what are you looking for now? She looks him in the eye. Just want to fight. He raises a brow. Fight what? Sparring? Amateur? Pro? Doesn't matter. You that hungry? Alina glances at the heavy bag swinging in the corner. Hungry enough, he nods. You earned one thing today, respect. But that's not enough. You drop a champ, people watch. Next time, someone's coming harder. Maybe dirty. She doesn't flinch. Let them. He studies her. Okay. Tomorrow, 6 a.m. Be here. Alina stands. I will. As she turns to leave, the younger fighter who spoke earlier follows her outside. That was crazy. You trained somewhere else before? Alina finally speaks with a hint of warmth. Used to. A long time ago. You go pro? No? Then how'd you learn that? She stops. Life teaches you how to fight if you survive enough rounds. He stares, unsure how to respond. She offers a small nod and walks off into the fading daylight. As she disappears around the block, the camera lingers on the gym's exterior. Old, rugged, weather-beaten, yet now carrying the silent imprint of something new. A legend in the making. Rain tapped softly against the cracked window pane of Alina's apartment, a tiny one-room flat tucked above an old bakery on a quiet street. She sat cross-legged on the worn wooden floor, not watching the rain, but staring down at a thin cloth bundle in her lap. Her fingers moved with hesitation as she unfolded it, revealing a photograph in a frame so scratched it looked like it had survived a war. In the faded image, a much younger Alina stood in boxing gloves, grinning shyly, beside an older man with deep-set eyes, a thick gray beard, and arms like carved oak. He was dressed in a ranger's uniform, a cap tucked under one arm. That man, her grandfather, had once been a local legend, not just in the wilderness where he tracked bears and poachers, but in a hidden wooden barn where he trained kids from the village in the art of boxing. But he only trained a few, and he never accepted anyone who didn't show heart. Alina was the only one who ever stayed. She had been his pride, though he rarely said it out loud. Her fingers brushed the edge of the glass, and for a moment her face softened, then stiffened again, like a wave had risen and crashed in her mind. The memory wasn't just nostalgia, it was pain, a memory layered with unspoken regret. 7 years ago, she had left that ring, not because she lost, but because she had won too violently, in a match that wasn't even supposed to be real. It had been a friendly bout in a local underground circuit, illegal, unsanctioned, a crowd of men who wanted blood more than boxing. She was only 16 then, too young to be there. But her grandfather had begged her not to go. She had gone anyway. Her opponent had been twice her size, twice her age, and cruel. He mocked her, laughed as she danced around him, But she'd seen her grandfather's teaching in every movement. She waited, timed it, and then she dropped him in the second round. A perfect counterpunch. But the crowd turned ugly. The man's brother stormed the ring. A bottle flew. Fists, boots, chaos. Her grandfather had pulled her out, shielding her from the riot. A week later, the barn was burned down. They never found out who did it. That was the last day she ever put on gloves, until now. And yet, after all these years, the discipline hadn't left her bones. It had just slept quietly under the surface, like fire beneath snow. The buzz of her phone pulled her back. A message lit the cracked screen. Coach gave me your number. Respect. You got skill. Want to spar sometime? Dima. She stared at the message, then locked the phone without replying. The truth was, she didn't know if she was back for good. All she knew was something inside her had shifted when she stood over that fallen fighter yesterday. It wasn't the win. It was the silence that followed. The recognition, the buried identity emerging like a shadow rising behind her. She glanced over at the gloves near the door. Old, fraying at the seams, but they were still hers. Just like this fight was still hers. She picked up the gloves, stood slowly, and without a word, walked to the door. Outside, the street was still wet with rain. The bakery below hadn't opened yet. The sky was still dark, but the horizon was beginning to pale. And so was she, not hesitant anymore, but clear. A boxer not chasing fame, a fighter returning to the ring not to win belts, but to reclaim pieces of herself that she had once abandoned. In that quiet, she locked the door behind her and stepped into the morning, into the fight that waited, and into the story that was no longer someone else's to tell. By the time Alina reached the gym the next morning, the sky was still gray with sleep and the streets nearly empty, save for a milk truck rattling by and a few pigeons fluttering around the curb. She slipped in through the side door, the way the coach had shown her, and was met by the scent of leather, chalk, and old sweat. Comforting, almost familiar now. Coach was already there, wrapping his hands at the bench like always, without saying a word. Just a glance that said, "You came back." Good. No fanfare, no applause. That's how she liked it. Alina dropped her duffel, laced her gloves, and began to shadowbox in the corner while the gym slowly came to life around her. First came the low hum of the heaters, then the radio playing soft old rock, then the clang of weights being lifted by early risers. A few fighters filtered in, each casting a sideways glance her way, some respectful, some uncertain, and at least one, she noticed, with something closer to resentment. His name was Max, younger than the star fighter she'd knocked out, but cocky, fast, and loud. The kind of fighter who always needed a crowd. He'd been one of the gym's rising names before her sudden appearance, and he didn't seem too pleased about the shift in attention. He made his entrance louder than necessary, slapping his gloves together and laughing at something no one said. "Coach, you seeing this? Instagram's going nuts," he called out, waving his phone. "Girl drops Titan fighter in one round. 15,000 views in a night. Who even filmed it?" Coach didn't answer. Alina kept shadowboxing, focused. Max strutted past her, muttering, "Careful, superstar. You'll burn out before the weekend." She ignored it. That irritated him more. The next 2 hours were drills, footwork, mitt work, bags, sweat pouring down her back, wrists aching, shoulders burning, but she didn't stop, not once. Coach said little, only gave brief nods or corrected angles with the tap of his fist. But she could feel something shift. The gym wasn't just watching now, it was beginning to learn from her. Younger fighters paused to copy her slips, her turns, her calm rhythm. Even the coach adjusted the stance of one trainee, saying, "See what she's doing there? That's balance." It didn't sit well with Max. At the end of the session, he walked over, gloved hands still on, and tossed a towel over his shoulder. "Hey, you and me. Light spar. Right now," he said. She looked at him, calm. Coach raised a brow. "You sure?" Max grinned. "Just friendly. Let the new champ stretch her legs." Alina didn't flinch. "All right." The gym quieted. Some were stretching, others stopped entirely. The air grew tight with unspoken tension. In the ring, Max bounced on his toes, confident and sharp. Alina entered quietly, eyes steady, gloves up. The bell rang. He came in fast. Too fast. 3 jabs in succession meant more to intimidate than land. She dodged each with smooth head movement, her footwork tight. He circled. She stayed in the center. He tried to bait her, feints, fast hands, but she didn't bite. When she finally struck, it was one sharp jab to his ribs that made him gasp. Not from pain, but from surprise. His smile faltered. He pushed harder now. Combinations, aggression, cornering tactics. She pivoted, rolled, tapped his guard, and stepped out. A dance. Calm and deadly. Finally frustrated, he lunged in with a wild right hook. Sloppy, emotional. That's when she slipped under and tapped his chin with a fast uppercut. Light, controlled, but loud enough to echo through the ring. The coach stepped in. "That's enough." Max raised his gloves like it didn't matter, but his flushed face said otherwise. Alina simply stepped out of the ring. No celebration, no mockery, just silence. Some clapped. Others just watched. But Max, he watched her differently now, not with curiosity, with calculation. He nodded slowly, as if storing something away. Later in the locker room, she heard him on the phone, whispering angrily to someone. She didn't catch the words, but she caught the tone. Envy, trouble, the kind that doesn't always wear gloves. As she walked home that evening, dust settling over the rooftops, she knew something had changed. She was no longer just the girl who landed one punch. She was becoming a target. And in boxing, just like in life, targets draw predators. But she didn't feel fear, only clarity. Whatever was coming, she'd be ready. This wasn't just about fighting anymore. It was about staying standing. It was 3 nights after the sparring session with Max when Alina first noticed the man in the leather coat watching her from across the street. She just stepped out of the gym, her duffel slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, when she caught a flash of a figure standing under the broken streetlight near the bus stop. He didn't move, didn't smoke, didn't pretend to be waiting for a ride. He just stood there staring. At first, she dismissed it. People stared now, ever since the video of her knocking out the gym's top fighter had started circulating on fight pages. But the next night, he was there again, and again the next. By the 4th night, she crossed the street and walked straight toward him. But just as she reached the corner, he was gone, like a ghost melting into the alley. She didn't sleep well that night. Memories had claws. They scratched in her dreams. Her grandfather's voice echoed again. "You don't just fight people, girl. You fight what they send after you." In the gym, she trained harder than ever. Coach noticed. He didn't ask questions. He just added more rounds, more bags, more bruises. Max kept his distance now, but the way he and 2 other fighters whispered near the lockers didn't go unnoticed. Still, she stayed quiet. Let them talk. Let them wonder. What she didn't expect was the visit. Late one evening, just after lights out, there was a knock at her apartment door. She opened it cautiously, a wrench in her hand, only to find a short, balding man in a tailored coat and expensive shoes, flanked by 2 silent men in black. He smiled like someone who never heard no. "Alina," he said, pronouncing her name too perfectly. "I represent a private fighting circuit. No cameras, no rules, big names, bigger money." She didn't answer. He continued, slipping a card into her hand. "We saw what you did. We know who trained you. That kind of fire doesn't belong in amateur gyms." She stared at the card. It had no name, just a number and a red slash across the middle. "Not interested," she said flatly. The man only smiled. "You will be, when the real fight finds you." With that, he turned and walked down the hallway, the 2 shadows following him. That night, she burned the card in her sink, but unease crept into her bones. These people weren't just promoters. They were the kind of men who built rings out of fear and paid in favors. And someone had told them about her. The question was, who? The next day at the gym, Coach pulled her aside. "You all right?" he asked quietly. She nodded. He stared. "They came to me, too," he said. Her eyes sharpened. "You didn't?" "No," he cut her off. "But they're watching, and they don't knock unless someone opens a door." Maximum. She didn't say his name, but the thought settled like dust in her lungs. Later that afternoon, while wrapping her hands before the bags, Max walked by, smirked, whispered, "Fighters like you don't stay broke long, unless they're stupid." She didn't reply, but her silence said everything. That evening, as she left the gym, there was a note taped to her locker. A time, a location, no name. Just, "Show up if you want answers." She stood frozen for a full minute before peeling the paper off and folding it into her pocket. She knew this was a trap, or at the very least, a test. But walking away had never been her style, not when the gloves were already on. That night, she packed her grandfather's old pendant into her pocket, laced her boots, and walked alone into the deep cold of the city toward whatever waited in the dark. The address led her through a part of the city she hadn't walked in years, south of the train tracks, past shuttered warehouses and neon signs that buzzed like dying insects. The streets were quiet, but not empty. Eyes peered out of alleys, and the occasional blacked-out car crawled past like a predator hunting its prey. She found the building with the rusted red door and no windows. Two men stood outside, arms crossed, not saying a word. One of them opened the door when he saw her. No ID, no questions. Inside, the sound hit like a wave. Cheers, stomping, roaring bass. She descended a narrow stairwell painted black, deeper and deeper underground, until the hallway opened up into a space that shouldn't exist below a city street. It was a ring, bare concrete floor, floodlights above, iron fencing around the perimeter, like a cage that had once held animals. The crowd was shoulder to shoulder, a mix of wealthy suits, street thugs, and ghostly faces from every shadow of the city. No posters, no announcers, just blood and money. And in the middle of it all, pacing like a lion, was the man she recognized from the gym parking lot, the one in the leather coat. He looked up as she stepped in, smiling as if he'd just won a bet. "Welcome to the real fight," he said. She didn't smile. She scanned the room instead. There were no safety protocols, no referees, no medical tables, just two fighters, a cage, and a man with a stopwatch. "Why am I here?" she asked flatly. "Because someone paid to see what you can really do," he said, stepping aside to reveal her opponent. It was a woman, tall, scarred, maybe early 30s, arms covered in ink and eyes like frostbite. She bounced slightly on her toes, loose and ready. "Name's Vera," the promoter said. "She hasn't lost in 17 fights. You can leave now, or step in and change her record." Alina didn't move, didn't speak, just reached into her jacket and pulled out her gloves. The crowd roared with bloodthirsty glee. In the cage, Vera grinned. No rounds, no breaks, no rules. Just a single bell, and then chaos. When it rang, Vera charged in fast. She was no amateur. She threw a left hook that could have cracked ribs. But Alina sidestepped, slipped under, and countered with a tight jab to the neck. Vera stumbled, surprised by the speed. The crowd howled. Vera adjusted, circling now. She tested Alina's guard with rapid low kicks. Not allowed in traditional boxing, but Alina stayed light, evading with footwork drilled into her bones since childhood. Then Vera faked high and came in low with a spinning elbow. It clipped Alina's jaw. Blood. She staggered back. The crowd surged. The taste of copper lit a fire in her. Her grandfather's voice echoed again. "Don't fight to hurt. Fight to outlast." She stood her ground this time. Vera came in again, confident. And that's when Alina struck. A brutal combo. Jab, jab, liver shot, and an uppercut that sent Vera flying into the chain-link fence with a grunt. The crowd was stunned. Vera dropped to her knees, dazed but conscious. She raised a hand. Submission. The bell didn't ring. The crowd didn't cheer. It was too quick, too clean. The man in the coat stepped into the ring slowly, clapping once. "Very impressive," he said softly. "You belong here." Alina removed her gloves, face calm but stern. "I didn't come to belong. I came for answers." He tilted his head. "Answers to what?" She stared at him. "Who sent you? Who told you about me?" He grinned wider than before. "You already know the name, Alina. The one who's trying to be you, or beat you." She clenched her fists. Maximum. It had to be him. He told us you were dangerous, or the man said. He said you wouldn't last here. He made a bet against you. Alina's jaw tightened. Then tell him he lost. She walked out of the ring, not waiting for permission. But as she pushed through the crowd, she realized something more dangerous than pain had happened. They had seen her now. Not the girl from the gym, not the humble newcomer. They had seen the real fighter. And in this world, once they see you, they never stop coming. As she walked into the cold street air, her split lip aching and her pulse still thudding in her ears, she knew something for certain. This was no longer just about boxing. It was a war, and the ring had no exit. The morning after the underground fight, Alina woke with her ribs sore, knuckles raw, and a deep ache in her jaw that made her wince every time she moved it. She stood in front of the mirror, tracing the bruise beneath her eye, a blue shadow that told the truth better than any words could. She didn't look broken, she looked reborn. But the peace didn't last long. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Dozens of notifications, messages, missed calls. She picked it up and saw what she feared. Someone had leaked footage of the fight. Grainy, dim, film from the crowd, but unmistakably her. The clip was already circulating on shady fight forums, tagged with titles like, "The Girl from Nowhere," and "She Fights Like a Ghost." Worse, the comments weren't all praise. Some were rumors, lies. "She's part of the underground now. She's been juicing. She's sold out." Alina's chest tightened. That wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the post Max had shared on his story. Her picture, taken from the fight, captioned, "Everyone's got a price, even the quiet ones." That line hit harder than Vera's elbow. He wasn't just mocking her. He was painting her as something she wasn't. And in this world, stories spread faster than truth. When she got to the gym, things had changed. The locker room fell silent when she walked in. A few fighters nodded politely. Others just looked away. Coach was already waiting near the bags, his arms folded. "They're talking," he said quietly, "and not just the usual gym gossip." She nodded, jaw clenched. "I know. Max." Coach nodded grimly. "He's stirring the pot, wants to provoke you into a mistake, wants to drag you down where he is." "Then let him try," she said. But he put a hand on her shoulder. "You have to be smarter than him. Stronger isn't enough anymore. They're watching you, all of them." She understood. The fight wasn't in the ring anymore. It was in the silence. Zrania, the poisoned glances. That week, her training changed. She trained alone, early, before the gym filled. She ran at night through industrial parks, her mind repeating patterns, slips, counters, rhythms like breathing. She stopped answering messages, ignored calls. She was building something now. Inside. On the third day, she found another note taped to her locker. A different hand, different tone. It read, "You impressed the wrong people. Now they want more. Come to the docks, midnight, or we come to you." She crumpled the note. There was no signature, but she knew the style. The leather coat man wasn't finished with her. She took it to Coach. He read it slowly, then sighed. "This isn't just about fighting anymore, is it?" She shook her head. "It's about ownership." He looked at her hard. "If you go alone. I won't drag this gym into their world. I wouldn't ask you to." That night, she didn't go home. She changed into black sweats, wrapped her hands beneath her hoodie, and made her way to the edge of the docks, where fog rolled over the water like ghosts too tired to haunt. A single SUV was parked near the loading area, its headlights off. The leather coat man stepped out, alone this time. No guards, no smiles. "You didn't run," he said. "Good." "I don't run," she replied. He nodded. "We have another offer. Bigger venue. 5-figure payout. Just one round. Winner takes all." She stared at him. "Why me?" "Because the audience loves a story, and you're a mystery, but also because someone paid extra to see you fight." "Max?" He didn't answer. Just smiled. "Let's just say your old friend wants to watch you fall. Publicly." She stepped closer. "Then he should step in the ring himself." "He won't," the man said. "He doesn't have your courage, or your pain." Alina looked past him, toward the black water. "Tell him this," she said coldly. If he wants me broken, he better come do it himself, because I don't dance for anyone. She turned and walked away, expecting a warning, a threat, something. But he said nothing, and that silence was worse, because it meant the game had changed. The next morning the gym was tense. Max had returned, louder than ever, grinning, telling stories of secret matches and fighters with no honor. But Coach didn't say a word. And Alina, she just trained, harder, colder. Something inside her had shifted again. She wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. She was fighting to keep her name from being written by liars. The underground wanted her. The city whispered about her. And Max? He'd declared war. But what none of them understood, what they'd all forgotten, was that Alina came from bloodlines where survival was a promise made in silence. She didn't need an audience. She didn't need applause. She only needed the bell. And it hadn't rung yet. The call-out came on a Thursday night, subtle as a gunshot in a quiet room. Alina was finishing bag rounds when one of the newer fighters walked over, phone in hand, hesitant. "You need to see this," he said. On screen was a video, already viral in local circuits. Max stood in front of a camera, shirtless, hands taped, that smirk carved into his face like a permanent scar. "They say the ghost girl's a killer," he began, "but ghosts disappear when the light hits them. So here's the light. Alina, one-on-one, clean ring, no street tricks, you and me, gloves only. I win, you walk away from the sport. You win? Hell you won't. But come prove me wrong." The internet lit up within hours. Fight pages, forums, fan accounts. They all picked sides. Some backed Max, calling Alina overrated, a lucky puncher. Others had seen her underground fight and believed something more dangerous was blooming in her fists. But this wasn't about fans, not for her. This was a trap, and everyone knew it. Coach called her that night. "Don't take the bait," he said. "That fight isn't about proving anything. It's about destroying you." She didn't argue. She knew it, but the truth burned heavier than warning. "He's already trying to erase me," she said. "This is the only way I get to write my name myself." Coach sighed long and hard. "Then we train smarter than we ever have. No anger, no heat, just fire." For 2 weeks, the gym turned into a war room. Coach closed the doors to outsiders. Alina trained under blackout conditions. No mirrors, no music, no distractions. He worked her on timing, spacing, not just power, but precision. "You don't win by throwing first," he said. "You win by throwing last. Sharpest, cleanest, always cleaner than him." Every night she studied Max's footage, not the cocky trash talk or viral clips, but the details. His lazy right shoulder after round 2, the moment he lost footwork when countered, the way his guard dropped just before a cross. She memorized his flaws like gospel. Meanwhile, Max was everywhere. Interviews, live streams, flexing for crowds. He turned the fight into a circus, promising humiliation, revenge, dominance. "She's just a girl with a sad story," he said in one stream. "But I'm the headline." Alina didn't speak publicly once. Her silence only made the crowd hungrier. Fight night came fast. It wasn't in the gym. It was booked at a mid-sized venue downtown. A legal match now, fully sanctioned, cameras rolling, tickets sold out. The ring lights were brutal. The crowd pulsed with bloodlust. As she stood backstage, gloves laced, robe draped over her shoulders, her heart pounded slow and steady. Coach came to her side. "You ready?" She nodded. "More than he is." "Then go write your story, kid." When her name was called, the crowd didn't roar like they did for Max, but the silence that followed was louder than any cheer. She stepped into the ring. Max was already there, bouncing, grinning like a wolf. He mouthed something, probably another insult, but she didn't look. She stared straight ahead, locked in. The bell rang. Round 1 was a blur of motion. Max came in aggressive, expecting hesitation. She gave him none. She dodged cleanly, counters razor sharp, nothing wasted. Round 2, he turned up the heat. He clipped her jaw once, hard, but she didn't stumble. She reset, refocused. Round 3, the crowd started to shift. They saw it, Max swinging wider, slower, Her punches landed quieter but deeper. He was leaking stamina. She was just getting started. Coach's voice cut through the bell. He's breaking. Keep cutting angles. Keep the story yours. Round 4 came. Midway through, Max lunged with a looping hook. She slipped it perfectly and hit him with a liver shot so precise he froze. For a second, everything stopped. Then he dropped. Gasps. Silence. The ref counted. Max didn't get up until 8, wobbly and dazed. But he stood. The bell saved him. Round 5 was the last. She didn't need a knockout now. She just needed to finish what she'd started. And she did with cold precision. She danced around him, peppered him with jabs, made him miss, made him look small. When the final bell rang, the decision wasn't close. The judges called it unanimous. Alina's hand rose. The crowd erupted, not in favor, but in awe. Max slumped in his corner, breathing hard, face twisted, not from pain, but from the knowledge that he couldn't break her. Not in public, not in the ring, not even in the story. She left the ring calm, no celebration, no scream, just her name, finally unchained from anyone else's. The win over Max didn't just change her story, it detonated it. Within 24 hours, her name trended across fight forums, social reels, and underground circles that didn't even speak the same language. Clips of her dodging his punches in slow motion were cut with music, turned into edits, analyzed by trainers, idolized by teenagers who had never set foot in a real gym. Alina the Ghost was born, but fame is a double-edged fist. It lifts with one hand and grips your throat with the other. By the end of the week, she was fielding interview requests, podcast offers, even an invitation from a national women's league who suddenly saw great potential in her story. But Alina didn't want their story. She wanted hers. Coach noticed first, the shift in tone at the gym. Fighters who once ignored her now stared too long, asked too much, wanted to spar a little too hard. Some smiled wide, but their eyes said something different. Prove you're real. Others weren't as subtle. One girl, seasoned and bitter, cornered her after a session. You think beating Max makes you one of us? She hissed. Alina didn't blink. I'm not trying to be one of you. And she wasn't. She trained alone again, headphones in, world shut out. But isolation couldn't silence what came next. Another envelope appeared. No signature, just a photo. Her grandfather. Not young, not from the war, but recent, from the village. It was taken at an angle that suggested surveillance. A single line was scribbled across the back. He still owes us, and now, so do you. Her breath stopped, cold. It wasn't from Max. This was older, deeper. She took it to Coach. He read it twice, then looked up at her with something close to fear. You told me your family was clean. I thought we were. His expression darkened. You don't photograph someone like that unless they're sending a message. Then I need to send one back. No, he said, gripping her arm. Not like this. These people, if they knew your grandfather from that world, this isn't about fighting anymore. It's about bloodlines. Alina shook her head. Then I'll fight for mine. That night, she didn't sleep. She pulled out an old wooden box from under her bed, one she hadn't opened in years. Inside were clippings, faded newsprint articles about her grandfather, old fight records, and a photo of him younger, fists raised, a bear tattoo barely visible on his forearm. The same bear symbol was on the corner of the photo she'd received. Her heart dropped. This wasn't just a threat, it was a calling card. Medvejotnik, the Bear Syndicate, a name whispered in fight. Circles rumored to operate beyond the law. They didn't run fight clubs. They ran legacies. Quiet, violent ones. Fighters who didn't throw matches ended up in rivers. And now they wanted her. Days passed with no new contact. But she felt it. The tension. The shift. Eyes followed her outside gyms. Cars idled longer than they should have. One night she spotted a man in a heavy coat on her building's rooftop. Gone the second she blinked. Coach suggested she leave the city. Go home. Disappear. Let it cool down. But she wasn't running. Her name was finally hers. She wouldn't let it be stolen again. Then came the offer, delivered by hand. A man in a press suit waited for her after training. Not threatening, not friendly. A private bout, unofficial, not for fans, not for the league, for the syndicate. A test of blood. She didn't answer. If you refuse, the man added, your grandfather's debt returns. With interest. That night, Alina stood at the edge of a rooftop, wind tearing at her coat, city lights burning beneath her. She thought of everything. Max, the underground, the girl they mocked in the gym, the girl who cried the first time she bled from her nose, her grandfather holding her tiny fists like they were fire. She had clawed her way here with silence, pain, and control. Now they wanted to rip it all away in one illegal match. She didn't have a choice. But that didn't mean she had to play by their rules. I'll fight, she whispered to the night, but it's on my terms. Down below, the city waited, and somewhere in a dark room filled with old debts and forgotten rules, someone smiled, because the ghost had finally answered. The warehouse was cold, not from weather but from history. It stood like a skeleton at the edge of the industrial zone, its walls graffiti-stained, its lights flickering above a canvas mat laid directly on concrete. No ropes, no audience, just men in dark coats leaning against shadows and silence that hummed like electricity. This wasn't for fans. This wasn't for views. This was for something older. Blood. Debt. Alina stood still, shoulders relaxed, eyes locked ahead. Across from her, her opponent stepped forward, massive, deliberate. They called him Bogatyr, a mountain of muscle and scars with no expression and no past anyone could trace. She'd heard whispers. He'd killed before. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the man standing between them, holding a small red ledger. The bear has called, he said in Russian. The debt must be paid, by pain or by victory. The bell wasn't a bell, just a whistle. Then movement. Bogatyr charged like a train. Alina didn't try to match power. She weaved, slid, jabbed at angles, every step a calculation. The fight was pure. No rules, no timer. Just endurance. She bled early, a shot to her temple that rang like church bells. But she stayed up. Bogatyr grunted, confused. She moved like smoke, hit like lightning. But time dragged, and exhaustion dug claws into her lungs. By minute 7, she was running on instinct. Coach's voice haunted her mind. Don't fight the fighter. Fight the moment. And she did. When Bogatyr dropped his left, she pivoted hard, spinning elbow to his jaw, a crack like bone against stone. He staggered. The first time anyone had seen him move backwards. The silence deepened. Then she struck again. A flurry of precision. Liver, ribs, chin. He dropped, but not down, to one knee. Still conscious, still alive. The man with the ledger stepped forward. He yields. No cheer, no applause, just stillness. And then, debt closed. Alina stood there, chest heaving, vision blurred. She could barely hear what came next. The ghost may walk free. A pause. But the bear always watches. They left her there, alone on the mat. She walked out of that warehouse as dawn broke, bruised, bloody, but unowned. When she reached the street, the world felt different, quieter, not free, but hers. Back at the gym, Coach waited, pacing. When he saw her, he didn't speak. Just walked up and held her like a father who thought he'd lost a daughter. She let him. For the first time, she didn't resist the weight of care. Weeks passed. The fight world moved on. Max vanished from headlines. New stars rose. But Alina didn't chase the spotlight. She taught at the gym now, quietly. Took no interviews. When asked about the syndicate, she only said, "That was the price of my name." One day a girl showed up, young, nervous, holding gloves too big for her hands. Alina knelt beside her. "You fight?" The girl shook her head. "Not yet." "Good," Alina said. "Then let's learn right." And in that moment, no cameras, no roaring crowds, Alina's story truly ended. Not with glory, but with legacy.